Summer is over and school is back in session, and so is our show, Campus Killings. I'm Dr. Megan Sachs.
And I'm Dr. Amy Sloshberg, and we're the hosts of the podcast Campus Killings.
Season 3 of Campus Killings debuts September 14th, 2024, and this season will bring you 20 all-new cases.
Our show covers some of the most sinister crimes to take place on or around school campuses, or the cases we discuss have a school-connected theme.
In every episode, we break down exactly what happened, where things went wrong, and we provide our analysis as both educators and trained criminologists.
We hope that you'll join us for Season 3 of Campus Killings, and if you haven't listened to our first 2 seasons yet, there are plenty of episodes available for you to binge right now.
You're listening to Missing Persons, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including The Murder in My Family, DNA ID, Zodiac Speaking, Scene of the Crime, Beyond Bizarre True Crime, Citizen Detective, and Campus Killings. All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the podcast, its creators, or sponsors. If you would like to discuss a missing persons case on this podcast, please be sure to visit missingpersonspodcast.net. This episode may contain unsettling or disturbing subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
If you'd like to support Missing Persons and get VIP access to things like ad-free listening, early preview episodes, and bonus content of not only this show, but for every other podcast on the AbJack network of indie podcasts, consider subscribing to the show with an AbJack Insider subscription through Apple Podcast. For only $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year, you'll unlock a variety of listener benefits, and you'll be supporting the show in the process. Your support is greatly appreciated.
Welcome to Missing Persons, a podcast dedicated to spreading the word about people who have vanished under mysterious or unexplained circumstances and the family members who are looking for answers. I'm Jess Betancourt.
And I'm Mike Morford. Together, we created this podcast to help give a voice to people who continue to search for their missing loved ones. In some cases, even after decades have gone by. In each episode, you'll hear from Jess giving listeners the backstory and the basic facts of the disappearance.
Then Mike will speak with someone who's intimately connected to the missing person, and his guest will share their story with us. So sit back and enjoy this episode, and who knows, maybe you can help us find someone who's missing. Listeners will recall the case of Rebekah Barsotti, who went missing on July 20th, 2021, after she was believed to be on the banks of the Clark Fork River outside Superior, Montana, with her dog Cerberus. We covered that case in episode 46. Cerberus was found deceased 10 miles down the river several days after the two disappeared. Sadly, Rebekah's body was recovered from the Clark Fork River on May 17, 2022. We are going to replay Rebekah's episode now and follow it up with an update on the status of the investigation into her case. Please stay tuned after the episode. 33-year-old Rebekah Barsotti grew up in Virginia, but set out from her small town to see the country around 2007. She fell in love with Montana and married her husband David out there in 2015. According to Rebekah's mom, Angela Mastrovito, the marriage was rocky and Rebekah would often call home upset. Sometimes she even said she had been locked out of the house after an argument. She stuck it out until April 2021 when she and David separated. Rebekah moved into her own place in Superior, Montana, with her dog Cerberus, a black-haired large breed. She worked as a server at a nice restaurant called Plunk. On July 20th, 2021, Rebekah went missing. The last place Rebekah was believed to be that day was on the banks of the Clark Fork River outside Superior, near the Alberton Climbing Rock. There are no known witnesses who saw her there. Rather, she left behind her cell phone, which contained a video of her and her dog engaged in a hand signals training session on the riverbank. Rebekah's personal possessions were found on the riverbank on the east side of Alberton Rock. A hiker noted the ownerless items and after a time alerted the Montana Highway Patrol. The MHP arrived and found Rebekah's driver's license, credit card, cell phone, car keys, a dog leash, and the remote to her dog's e-collar. And her hat and glasses were set down there as well. But there was no sign of Rebekah. The Highway Patrol called in the Mineral County Sheriff's Office to investigate. They found Rebekah's silver 2014 Volkswagen Passat parked at a truck stop and rest area nearby at mile marker 71 on I-90. After finding Rebekah's things, the MCSO called Rebekah's next of kin, who was her ex-husband David. The two were in the process of divorcing, but he was the only family Rebekah had locally. David was the one who called Rebekah's parents and alerted them that Rebekah was missing. Oddly, while Rebekah was believed to have been at the riverbank filming her lessons with Cerberus around 5 p.m., she was seen earlier that day at an arranged meeting with someone associated with her estranged husband. According to a social media post by Mineral County Sheriff Mike Toth, Rebekah was last seen at the Town Pump gas station in Superior around 2:15 p.m. on the afternoon of July 20th. She had arranged to meet up with a Veterans Administration caregiver of her ex in order to collect some of her personal items he still had. After that, no witnesses have been located who saw Rebekah. The only evidence of her whereabouts is her car parked near the river and her things left on the riverbank. Because her personal items were left behind, the sheriff's office has treated this case from the beginning as a drowning. Sheriff Toth said to the media, "I believe she's in the river, and I think she drowned probably. Nothing leads us otherwise." He believes that Rebekah likely went into the water to rescue her dog, who went in first, and they both got caught in the current and drowned. Admittedly, this was just a theory, and the sheriff said he was open to other possibilities. But his drowning theory was soon backed up by evidence. Per NBC News, on July 26th, Sheriff Toth announced on social media that Cerberus had been found dead in the Clark Fork River by the Mineral County Search and Rescue Team, about 10 miles downriver from where authorities believe Rebekah and the dog went into the water. This was a large breed dog which is supposedly a strong swimmer. Drowning would likely occur only after an injury or a very strong current, which, based on conditions at the river in summer, is not typical, although some search and rescue workers indicated it has very dangerous parts. The river is a popular recreational area for water excursions run by local outfitters, but no one saw anything. The flat and wide beach where Rebekah placed her things is a popular destination for hikers and nature lovers, but no one saw her there. And there remains no sign of Rebekah. After Cerberus was found in Missoula County, the Mineral County Sheriff requested that the Missoula County Sheriff's Office take over the investigation. It has since been handed back to Mineral County. The Sheriff's Office personnel do not believe that whatever happened to Rebekah and Cerberus happened on the climbing rock itself. The Alberton Climbing Rock area was a popular one for hikers and climbers, with a promontory that was a climber's favorite. But it's not thought that Rebekah fell from this area, although it's not clear why that's the case. Rather, the prevailing theory is that Rebekah's case is a simple drowning. She went into the water to save her dog, and her body just hasn't surfaced for some reason, even though Cerberus was found 10 miles downstream. There are many cases in which bodies in rivers don't turn up for months or even years. But it is odd that the dog did turn up and Rebekah did not. And no one saw Rebekah go into the river. Rebekah's parents don't believe that she went into the river, or if she did, that she did so voluntarily. Angela told Dateline that she finds it doubtful that if Montana authorities are correct and Rebekah jumped in the river to save her dog, she would have taken the time to remove her hat and glasses and place them in neat piles on the beach. She said that if it were an emergency situation, Rebekah wouldn't have paused to take things out of her pockets. It has to be said that the family believes the sheriff's office did little investigation into other theories of this case. According to the family, the Mineral County Sheriff's Office treated the disappearance as a drowning event from the get-go. They did not fingerprint Rebekah's personal items or her car. They did not bring in search dogs. Mineral County and Missoula County Sheriff's Departments thoroughly searched the river using sonar, rescue boats, divers, and helicopters. But once they found Cerberus, they believed that it evidenced that Rebekah and her dog both drowned accidentally. They did not look into other possibilities, say the Mastrovitos. Both sheriffs have countered the Mastrovitos' claims. Mineral County Sheriff Mike Toth said that the search for Rebekah has been the most extensive in recent Mineral County history in terms of resources and man-hours. Missoula County Search and Rescue volunteers and detectives worked tirelessly to try and bring closure to this case and to Rebekah's family, Missoula County Sheriff T.J. McDermott said. And on the Mineral County Sheriff's Office Facebook page was posted the following in August 2021. As of right now, today's date, no family member is being looked at as a suspect in the missing person case of Rebekah Barsotti. Missoula County Sheriff's Office and Mineral County Sheriff's Office have both looked into all close family members, and as of now, unless new, credible information comes to light, none of them are a suspect at all! ! Rebekah's family has been told that David has an alibi for the afternoon Rebekah went missing, but they find it concerning that she vanished on the same day she collected her things from the go-between at the gas station. According to the family, Rebekah was afraid of David. She filed assault charges against him and obtained a no-contact order in March of 2021. The authorities have never searched his home or his vehicle, the family maintains. And the family has never been told exactly what David's alibi for that day is. Missoula County authorities issued a press release in September 2021 announcing that after expending 2,000 hours searching for Rebekah, it had exhausted all leads in the case. It would continue to be worked by Mineral County as an active missing persons investigation. In January 2022, the Mastrovitos announced that they had established a GoFundMe to help pay for an independent investigator, North Star Search and Rescue, which will search the river this spring, and a billboard the family erected on Highway 93 outside Missoula. Rebekah is described as being 5 foot 5 inches tall, weighing about 135 pounds. She has sandy blonde hair and blue eyes. She has a tattoo of a snowdrift on her right foot and ankle and a tattoo of a hummingbird and flowers on her left rib cage. Mike Morford sat down with Rebekah Barsotti's parents, Angela and Jerry Mastrovito, for Missing Persons. That conversation is coming up after a word from our sponsors.
Hi, I'm with Angela Mastrovito and Jerry Mastrovito, whose daughter Rebekah is missing. I want to thank you both for coming on, and I'm hoping we can spread the word about the case.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having us, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate the media coverage.
Yeah, no problem, and I hope we can help make a difference and get the word out there. I know this is a frustrating case. There's a lot of challenges in investigating it as well, due to the area, the ruggedness of it, that kind of stuff, I think. And we'll talk about some of that. But I did want to find out, the first thing I wanted to know, this is something that was completely life-altering. If I'm not mistaken, you picked up stakes and moved your lives to be closer to where this happened. How challenging has that been for you?
So yes, we found out on July 21st that Rebekah, we found out July 20th in the evening that Rebekah was missing. The missing person report was filed on the 21st. I came out on the 23rd and Jerry followed. I flew out. Jerry drove because of the rental car situation. So that way we'd have a car to use when we were here. And we spent the first 3 or 4 weeks in a hotel, and which was very expensive. And then there was a benefactor from Missoula County that helped us to cover that expense, which was greatly appreciated. We then moved into Rebekah's trailer. The landlord made an offer for us to sign the lease. So we assumed Rebekah's lease. Now, mind you, by that time, we had already moved everything out of her trailer into storage. So we moved the bare essentials back in. We don't know or didn't know anyone out here except Rebekah and her estranged husband. So they were our only contacts in Montana. And then, of course, with Rebekah missing, we know, I mean, she wasn't here. It's been a challenge. We don't know the area. We don't understand the laws of Montana and how they work, which are very different than the rest of the United States. Montana holds one of the highest levels of protection for privacy to the citizen of all the states in the United States. We've even been told it's higher than Texas laws. And so that creates a barrier for us as Rebekah's family trying to find the truth, because they protect the private citizen's rights above the victim's rights.
Yeah, that's going to be frustrating to have some red tape that, maybe slows down investigating this.
Exactly. And that's exactly what it's done. We were out here. We've been out here for 7 months now. Although many people will claim that Montana is a beautiful state as far as scenery, the mountains, the rivers, everything just looks like a barrier to us. We try to see the beauty in it, because Rebekah did embrace the beauty of this state. So every day I ask, Lord, please let me see the beauty in the surroundings here, because this is what Rebekah loved.
Yeah,
and loved.
And that's what drew her to that area in the first place, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. So she actually first moved out here in 2007 because of the snow. She snowboarded back east in Virginia, and she had this crazy dream of being a snowboard instructor out here. and so that's why she came out here. And or one of the reasons, she just said the world was too big to stay in Partlow, Virginia, and she and a friend drove across country. And she loves the mountains. She loves the area. She loves the people. And I do have to say, the people here have huge hearts. The community has embraced us. They have embraced us in our sorrow and our anguish. They have embraced us in our frustrations. They have embraced us helping in our search for Rebekah. They have embraced us in helping to organize events on behalf of us so that we have the financial means to continue our search efforts and to stay out here. The community has been amazing. The people of Montana have big hearts.
Wow, that's good to have that kind of support when you're going through something like basically just uprooting your life and going all the way across the country. To have this team of people that come to your aid is positive.
Yes. And, it's been hard. It's been hard not just for Jerry and I, because we are out of our element. We are out of our routine. There is no routine. We moved from a home with a yard to maintain and take care of, and friends back home and family. We would see our grandchildren every 6 to 8 weeks, and now we see them once every 6 months.
Wow.
So that's been hard on extended family as well. So it's not something that has just affected us, but it's affected those who know us. Sure. And are part of our lives.
I think as a parent, any of us that are parents wouldn't fault you and would support you doing that difficult thing of going all the way across the country, even if it means sacrificing seeing people or being in the home that you're used to, that kind of stuff, because you want to find out what happened to your child. So I think any of us that have kids can get in your corner and understand where you're coming from.
Right. And I think the thing that is that we're thankful for is I had just retired in November of 2020, and Jerry had been retired for several years. And we realized that a lot of people who have missing loved ones still have a job. They still have children in school. You know, we were just at a different place in life where we didn't have anything to restrict us from coming out here.
Yeah.
And so we're very thankful that we do have the ability to stay here. And our whole purpose for staying is to find Rebekah, to find justice for Rebekah, and to know the truth. And that is actually now transformed into, throughout this terrible event, that forever, Jerry always reminds me that this event forever changes our life, regardless of the outcome. It forever changes our life. It has changed our path and our journey. And when we can get through the emotional turmoil of this, we want to be able to concentrate on bringing awareness and education to the community about domestic violence and how to navigate through reporting domestic violence and missing persons. And the reason why we want to include domestic violence is because that's what precipitated this event.
Yeah,
See,
and that's
when something like this happens, there is no SOP on what do I do when my child or loved one is missing. What steps do I have to take to navigate through the waters, if you will, to find my loved one?
Yeah.
There's no guidelines for that. And so we're getting a lot of help from people out here that did have loved ones that went missing. And so by their help and their love, we feel as though we've got enough of stuff that we can write a book on how to navigate a missing person event in life.
well. That's
One of the things
I was going to say
ahead.
that's a very good point, because there is no handbook of, okay, my loved one's missing, what's my first step, and then what I do after that. So to just go into this and not have any, guidelines, that's very it's got to be very daunting.
So one of the things that they do have here in Montana is they have a missing person specialist department in the Department of Justice, and you are supposed to be assigned a liaison between the family member and the police department. We were never assigned a liaison, and we found out that that's what was supposed to have happened many, many weeks later. And so the point man in the special, in the missing person specialist division, he sort of became our liaison, but he's up in Helena and he's removed and he's working more than just our case, obviously. So really, we think what should have happened was there should have been an appointed liaison to the missing person case, and they should have contacted us and introduced themselves. And the whole purpose of it, according to the job description or the article at the DOJ, is that they act as a liaison to help you navigate with the local police department. We didn't have that. I mean, we had the police department. Don't get me wrong. We had the police department, but we started out in Mineral County, which is the county that opened Rebekah's case, who at that time in July had a sheriff and I want to say 4 or 5 deputies. No investigators, no detectives, just 4 or 5 deputies.
And no money.
And they're not, and no money, because it's a small county. And so they literally were already at a disadvantage for lack of resources. And then on July 29th, Missoula County came in on the case. But, that was 9 days later.
Yeah.
So there was crucial time up front that was lost. I mean, your most important hours at the time of any event are the first 24 to 48, maybe 72 hours.
Sure.
And crucial time was lost. It was never considered a homicide. They only considered Rebekah a river accident. So important questions and important assessments that should have been done at the time were never carried out. And you can't go back and recreate those.
Yeah.
Those are moments that are lost.
Yeah.
Plus, when we did find out who our liaison from the state was, we invited him to a meeting that we had with Missoula Police and Mineral Police. And when they found out he was coming, they called him up and said there was no need for you to come to this meeting.
Yeah, they uninvited him.
Oh, wow.
He was going there to take notes for us.
Yeah, their position is that they cannot take sides, but they can be present in a meeting. And we understood that. We were comfortable with that, but then we found out the day of the meeting he had been asked not to attend.
Oh, that's all stuff that you're learning, things that you're learning on the fly and after the fact and everything else.
Yes.
Yeah, because everything that we do, we can't come in the front door. We have to come in the back door, and we have to do a lot of detective work to get in that back door, and it's very frustrating and stressful.
Sure.
To put the words mildly.
Yeah, we've hired 2 private investigators. They're as different as night and day, but they both have they both have made positive contributions, and but basically we've had to hire investigators to do the work that we felt maybe wasn't accomplished while law enforcement was working the case. Now, it still is an open case, but they're not actively working it. If a lead comes in, they'll consider it, but that's it. So actually what we've done now is, we have Crime Stoppers on board, but I had to fight to get Crime Stoppers on board. The state liaison assisted me with that because I couldn't get that to happen locally. And so Crime Stoppers came on board November 8th. But then I found out that if Crime Stoppers gets a lead, they give it to the sheriff or the county that's handling the case. And there is no level of accountability. It's an honor system. So if Crime Stopper gets a lead and they process it to see if it's valid or not, they call the county, let them know about the lead, but the county is under no obligation to do anything with that lead. And they are not under any obligation to report back to Crime Stoppers.
Well, that's pretty.
So that works great if you have a county that's working on your behalf, but if there's no accountability and no expectation to get the outcome of the lead that was provided, then you don't even know that lead is going to be followed up.
Sure.
So what we've done is we've hired 2 investigators and our attorney, and we've had the attorney all along, but we just have created a different process.
Plus, the sheriff of Mineral County, he's handling his case with tunnel vision. He says that she went in the river.
And that's the only scenario.
And because they found her clothes on the side of the riverbank, that's all they can say. They won't look anywhere else but in the river. But since July, they haven't found her in the river.
Yeah.
So I say, well, how can she be in the river if you haven't found her? We had all these search groups come in and search the river. We have whitewater rafting team of companies coming in every day tour groups going up and down that river, and nothing was found. So how can you still say she's in the river?
And law enforcement's saying is that a fisherman, a rafter will find her. Some, like your whitewater rafting teams will find her. Your recreational kayakers will find her. Your fishermen will find her. But then when it became hunting season, it was, a hunter will find her. Well, we've gone through the summer recreational season and the winter hunting season, and nobody has found her.
Wow.
Plus, in the beginning, the community and Angela had volunteer search groups go out up and down the river to help us look for Rebekah on weekends. Well, one of the groups found clothes on the riverbank, and we told them, if you find anything, stay there and call 911. So they did that. They found clothes. The police came in and said, okay, thank you, and left. Well, when we had our big meeting, I brought that up. I said, what did you do with the clothes that you found on the riverbank? Nothing. I said, why not? Well, we find clothes on the riverbank all the time. I said, so you didn't assume that person drowned in the river? Well, no. Why not? Because that happens all the time. I said, so what made Rebekah's clothes make you go search the river where the other clothes that we found, you didn't? Why two different scenarios and cases? What made you say that Rebekah went in the river? And so it was like crickets for an answer. They didn't answer because now they had to identify that what happened with Rebekah. Plus, Rebekah's stuff, they said, was thrown on the ground. They showed us a picture of the clothes, okay? And what person would take their ID card out and his credit card out and just lay it on the sand so everybody in the world can see it? And they said, well, that was tampered with. I said, I don't buy that, because the way the credit card and the driver's license were placed in the sand, you couldn't place them any better if you had a ruler. They were straight, and the distance apart was straight. Wow. I said, so how can you say that she well, that's what she did. I said, prove it. Did anybody see her go in the river? No. Did anybody hear her go in the river? No. So that was their story that they took. They never did any forensics on the stuff that they found. Oh, let me take that back. They did do fingerprints on her cell phone. How often do you handle your cell phone? 100, 200, 300 times a day?
Yeah.
They only found one partial fingerprint.
Yeah, that's strange.
I said, that ain't right. I said, an item you handle all day long, and you only find one fingerprint? I said, what's wrong with that picture? Well, we don't know. All we know is it was tampered with. The scene was tampered with. Oh, okay. So you say she went in the river? Yeah. I said, how come I don't see any footprints in the sand where she dug in to go chase her dog?
Yeah.
Well, that's not that kind of sand.
Yeah.
I said, wait a minute. I said, you're going to make dents in the sand no matter what. I don't care what kind of sand it is. But yet, we found boot prints right next to her clothes. I said, well, whose boot prints are those? Oh, those are the deputies. Are you sure? Well, I said, yeah, he was the only one there. How do you know? Did you look at the bottom of his boots to see if they matched the boots in the sand? Well, no. I said, and my wife says, anybody can buy boots at the Army Navy store. I said, boot and footprints are like fingerprints. No two are alike. So you didn't check the boots of your deputy, right? They said, no. Why not? Well, we didn't have to. And that's all we always got. We didn't have to do that because we know the situation. We don't have to let you know anything because this is
An open investigation.
an open investigation. We can't do forensics or we can't give you back any of the items because it's a possible criminal case. I said, wait a minute. It's either she's in the river missing or it's a crime scene. Which one is it? You can't do both because both of them require two different types of searches.
Sure.
And so that's the fight that we've been fighting from day one.
And the events that led up to Rebekah missing was on March 9th, there was a 911 call to the marital home for domestic violence. And that resulted in her husband being removed from the residence, and he spent 3 nights in jail. And during that time, a charge for personal family member assault was issued by the court, and a standing order of no contact. So Rebekah stayed at the marital home after that event, and her estranged husband was not allowed back at the marital home as long as she was living there. She did get a job in Missoula, which was about an hour from where they lived. She did secure a place to rent in Missoula, and she moved out of the marital home on April 10th. And then on the day of her disappearance, she had a prearranged meeting with her estranged husband's caregiver to pick up the last of her items from the house, and they met at Town Pump in Superior. So the caregiver is the last person to see Rebekah alive that we're aware of.
Okay.
And then Rebekah's car and her belongings were located at mile marker 72 on Interstate 90 shortly after that meeting.
That same day is, you're saying that the stuff was found that day?
Yes, the very same day.
Okay.
And Town Pump has 10 or 12 outdoor cameras, to our knowledge, but law enforcement only asked for footage from 2 for whatever reason. I don't know the rationale behind that. And we were shown, like a 30-second capture of a photo that they say, shows Rebekah's car and the truck the caregiver drove. It was never blown up enough that I could actually see Rebekah in the photo. And I had asked them if they could enhance the photo so we can see what Rebekah was wearing, and I was informed no, they could not. So that was one of our many pleas to elevate this to resources at the FBI, because they obviously would have resources to enhance photos, and we were denied. We've been denied multiple times to get outside agencies above county level involved. Now, I did meet with the county commissioners of Mineral County on November 26th. It's on YouTube, and the meeting is, and I outlined about a dozen reasons why I felt it should be elevated to state level. And the county commissioners did agree, and directed Sheriff Toth to ask DCI, Division of Criminal Investigation of Montana, to come in. And our attorney started calling once a week to DCI to follow up after that meeting. And 2 weeks ago, he finally received verbal communication from DCI that they would be coming to Mineral to take a look at Rebekah's case. Now, I don't know exactly what that means. Are they just going to look at paperwork, or are they actually going to open the investigation under their direction? I don't know yet. But that's where we're at. And so we're waiting for that meeting to happen. We've heard that it may happen between Mineral County Sheriff and DCI at the end of this week, but that remains to be seen. So I'm having my attorney follow up to confirm that.
And the one thing we also did in the meantime, we wrote letters to the governor, to the state representatives, to the attorney general, and to all the other people below them.
Senators,
and you know, everyone all pushed the buck. Well, you got to talk to so-and-so. You got to do this and you got to do that. And that's not my problem. We're sorry that this happened to your daughter and blah, blah, blah. And that's the resistance that we got from everybody in the state. You know, nobody wants to take ownership of a missing person. And, you know, and that's really, really frustrating when your state government won't even acknowledge that you have a missing person. You know, and this is part of what I'm saying is everything that we're doing, we've got to go through the back door.
It's met with resistance. So the way Montana's government is set up, the sheriff of each county has ultimate authority to make decisions, to say yes or no. So as long as you have a proactive sheriff, you're great. But if you have a sheriff that maybe wants to hold the case too tight to their chest and not open it up to outside agencies, then it can hinder any progress in the case.
Yeah.
And the Sheriff's Association, the people of Montana really need to understand the hierarchy of their government officials and the sheriff's role, because what the sheriff decides is how it goes. And
it's as if the sheriff calls the shot and nobody can dispute what the sheriff says.
There's no accountability.
I said, he's going to have a boss. Everybody has a boss. I don't care who it is. And if the sheriff says, I say what goes on here. I said, he's got a boss. And guess what? We're finding out he calls the shots.
He calls the shots. And
you know?
So it's very frustrating that there's no
accountability.
There's no accountability and there's no process for the citizens of Montana to request additional assistance when necessary.
Not to mention that this year being a election year for the sheriff, what do you think he's going to do? He's going to have as little controversy as possible because he wants everything to look roses because he's coming up for re-election. And so if he has negative comments from everybody and write-ups and stuff, he thinks he's going to get the job again because he gets voted in every 2 years or whatever it is. And this sheriff, he was appointed. He wasn't voted in. So that opens up the door for another question, you know?
Uh-huh.
And we have come to the place where we have hired our own search and rescue team. They are coming out in March. For the entire month of March, they will be here to look for Rebekah. We just contracted with them last week. So this is at our own expense.
Oh,
the county's not paying for it, the city's not paying for it, and the state's not paying for it.
So you have a say in what happens and you can control some of it.
Yes.
We get to control all of it.
We get to control all of it. The only way that the search and rescue team that's coming in can be canceled is by God himself. And then the only other way is if the county, state, or federal government can prove that they have Rebekah in person or can prove that they know where she is. And they can't just say we know where she is. They have to prove it. So they have to present Rebekah.
A good example of what's going on was about a month ago, a girl went missing, and it was one of the county attorney?
Yeah, Caitlin Berry, and my heart goes out to her family. She went missing in Sydney.
Yeah.
Her mother was a prosecuting attorney in that area, and within hours, the FBI, DCI, you name the three-letter agency, and they were on board.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful that, her family had that resource available to them, but the average citizen in the United States does not have those resources.
Because every time we try to say, get the FBI involved, get the DCI involved, get somebody else involved, the ATF, get all of these people. No, we can't do that. I said, why not? Because I'm not going to invite them. We don't need them. And here's a sheriff that's saying, I don't have the manpower, I don't have the resources, I don't have the money, but yet he won't call in the help.
Yeah.
So we've had to fight for everything that we're getting. I will say that in the beginning of this search effort, I'm not going to say they didn't do anything, because that would not be a correct statement. But I think what they did was they looked at what was presented and didn't ask any additional questions.
They just went with the easiest tunnel vision version of what happened, basically.
Yes.
Yes, you hit the nail right on the head. And so, like, there were, they called in some local divers, some local search and rescue groups. But this is a small county, and even Missoula didn't have all the equipment that they needed to do a thorough search. And so,
as a matter of fact, we had to find the volunteer search groups for the police department to come in and do the searches on the river. This volunteer search group was from out of state. Angela looked up several different volunteer search groups, and we presented it to the sheriff, and there was only one that they would let in.
Yeah, so they and that actually was approved under Missoula County, and they came in, and they were here for 3 weeks. So they did what they could in 3 weeks. But they had other cases to move on to. They weren't successful in locating Rebekah while they were here. And in fact, that's the team we've contracted with. It's North Star, K9 Search and Rescue, and Wings of Hope out of Wisconsin. And we have contracted with them to come back out for 2 reasons. One, they're already familiar with Rebekah's case. Actually, 3 reasons. 2, they're already familiar with the river and the terrain. And 3, they were out here for another case. Taylor Simonson in Missoula County went missing in October. And they came out and they assisted in locating Taylor Simonson. He had passed away, unfortunately, but they found him. And so we had maintained contact with North Star, and so they made the offer to be privately hired, and so we took them up on that offer. And so when they come out, they're coming out March 1st. They will bring everything they have. They are bringing something called a ROV, which, to the best of my understanding, combs the bottom of the river, but has extension arms that you can put sonar equipment on it and look into caverns and eddies. They're bringing drones. They're bringing scuba divers. They're bringing enough dog teams that every day there will be a fresh team of 3 cadaver dogs. And they're going to be here for a whole month.
Wow.
And so, but we're resorting to doing this because we want closure, and we want to find Rebekah, and we want to move on and get justice for Rebekah. And then we want to be able to, like I say, help bring awareness to domestic violence. One thing that we found out recently in the state of Montana, domestic violence charge is a misdemeanor. We've known that all along. But we just found out that intimidation under Montana Code is a felony. And so my question is, why aren't these people who are filing domestic violence charges informed that intimidation is a felony? And why can't they wrap it all together? Because intimidation is creating fear, creating the feeling that you're powerless, creating the feeling that someone else has control over you and that your concern for safety is at risk. But apparently when these people go in to file a domestic charge, nobody is telling them it's a form of intimidation. The community needs to know that. The people who are filing domestic violence charges need to know it's a form of intimidation and that an intimidation charge is a felony, because that has a lot more teeth in it than a misdemeanor.
Sure. And all that stuff has some relevance when someone goes missing that's been through a history of this and, they're going through a breakup of their marriage. That kind of thing would make sense that you would want to, cast a light on that. And just while we're on that subject, has her estranged husband been cooperative or been talked to by police?
He's been spoken to by police, and we were told at the very beginning, back on August 4th, when we met with the sheriff, that he is not a suspect and never will be considered a suspect. Those were the sheriff's words.
Or a person of interest.
Or a person of interest.
Oh.
And that's where it stopped. And so, not that we are here to falsely accuse. Our concern is that the investigation was never considered as a homicide to consider foul play at a truck stop, at a fishing access area where the bushes are so overgrown you can't even see the vehicle until you're on top of them. It's a highly populated recreational area. The fact that nobody saw Rebekah or her dog at a highly populated area on July 20th at 95 degrees is highly suspicious.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, because a lot of this is what's going by the word of the caregiver. Am I correct in assuming that what happened and supposedly happened is what the caregiver said happened?
Yes. Yeah, the caregiver or Rebekah's estranged husband.
Yeah, two caregivers, and they both talk different stories, and they're pro.
Well, they're David's employees, so they're gonna, but yeah. So the story that was presented by Rebekah's estranged husband and the caregivers.
And we'll give you a good example of how all that worked. Is when I first get out here, we had made an arrangement to speak with, Sheriff Talk. Well, when he walked in there, he looked at us and as if, what are you doing here questioning me, And he already had a vision of we're disgruntled and angry parents, and we don't know what the hell we're talking about, okay? Now, how does he find that out other than through one person, the only person that knows us, So he was getting information about us before we were even here.
Yeah, before we were even here. And then on that, and since we've gone there, on our initial visit with the sheriff, he looked at us in the eye and said, "I wasn't even going to look for your daughter."
Wow.
That was on our initial visit. And he said, "Except that my deputy insisted."
Plus, we had numerous local TV station interviews. And a lot of what I personally bring up is domestic violence. And Rebekah was married. And I think only one TV station made that fact.
Yeah, and the domestic violence wasn't new. They were married in 2015, and there were multiple 911 calls to the home throughout the years. So it wasn't a new occurrence, but there was an occurrence that, obviously changed the course.
Oh.
And what we have found out is that there's a narrative that the media has to abide by.
Yeah.
And so that's, and why that is, I don't know, to cover, their ability to, I don't know. I don't understand it. We're just learning about it now, all these months later.
Yeah. See, if the TV stations and the local news were to report the facts and not skewer the facts, would probably be in a better situation today. But they're not. It's just like every news station around. They just want to make it look like, oh, these parents, we feel bad for their parents. But they won't say the real reason why she is missing. And all of this is all, if you connect the dots, it's all going to come back to domestic violence. I even threw up that Gabby case to the police department, and that was all brought on by domestic violence and how the police department didn't go by the evidence that they had. And in the long run, Gabby was killed. In the long run, the boyfriend killed himself because he knew the time was running out on him. I said, so domestic violence is a very important role here. And the more that the media dismisses that, the more the domestic violence is going to fall by the wayside.
Yeah.
And that's what needs to be brought out here. Domestic violence doesn't help anybody, especially the victim.
Yeah.
Somebody has brought up that, and we were recognized part of this at first. When Rebekah was announced missing to the public here in Montana, in Missoula primarily, and Mineral County, there was no mention that she was married. There was because she was still officially married. There was no paperwork.
She still is.
Yeah, she's still married. There was no paperwork filed for separation or divorce legally. But she had moved out of the marital home to start her own life over and start that process. But the media did not report her as being married, did not report her as being involved in a domestic violence situation or case that was ongoing. And oddly enough, they never mentioned her vehicle. They said her vehicle was found, but they never identified what it was. That it's a 2014 VW Silver Passat. And that was never identified. So nobody never was aware of, on the 20th of July, did I see a 2014 VW Passat that was silver? And did I see it at mile marker 72 truck stop? It was never identified. It was never pictured until we started posting stock photos of it.
You think that would be a helpful thing to put out there just so people could, maybe come forward with information?
And that was one of the downfalls of the police department. They didn't do any investigative work. Okay? They didn't do any forensics on the car. No forensics on the items found on the beach. None of that stuff was done.
No, when Jerry asked, did you know how many trucks were in the parking lot? Because it is a truck stop.
Because that's the first thing you run into when you come off the ramp.
Yeah.
It's the truck stop.
And they said no. And we're like, but so you didn't go knock on the doors of the truckers and say, did you have dash cam running? Did you see this young woman? Did you see anything strange? Nobody asked that question. They don't even know how many trucks were there that day. They don't know how many vehicles were there that day. And Jerry said, well, that's the wrong answer because you said Rebekah's car was there, so there should have at least been one. They didn't assess how many recreational or trucks were down at the fishing access site. Though there was, and what we also find extremely odd is that last year, Mineral County received COVID money, and they specifically used some of the COVID money to buy body cams for the officers, for the deputies. That particular day, the two responding deputies, as we have heard it, did not have their body cams on and running. They might have had them on, but they weren't operating. And we're like, so you spent all this money on new body cams for your deputies, and they're putting them on, but they're not using them. Why?
Oh,
Why aren't they using them?
That's troubling. So I just
And
along those lines, it seems like the police, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you're definitely not satisfied with what they've done and the conclusions they've come to, but just loose ends like this, right down to little things like the body cam, have been an issue. It sounds like all along.
yeah, I mean, it's just that, I mean, so it's either incompetence or it's lack of knowledge, but I wouldn't want to admit to either of them being in a professional role of service to the community.
Sure. Or pride. Pride is one thing that might be part of it too. They don't want anyone second guessing them or bringing in outsiders like the FBI to show them how it's done, because that could be an issue
That
there
goes
too.
right back to what I was saying. That
Right.
He's running for sheriff, and any negative outcomes that go against the sheriff, it won't look good for him when he goes to run for re-election.
Sure.
But it just, so it's, this has really been a, oh my gosh. I mean, every day is a roller coaster.
I'll give you another example of the difference in police. We've been threatened. Our trailer we're living in right now here in Missoula, we got a phone call that our trailer is highly combustible. And then a couple of days later, our lawyer,
A month later.
a month later, our lawyer gets information that they're going to go to Virginia to burn our house down. So I get on the phone, and I work with policemen back home. And I told my buddy, my neighbor, I said, hey, call the police and let them know what's going on. And I told him everything, and he said, okay. Well, the lieutenant called back and said, I need the telephone number for our lawyer. Okay. So he calls, talks to our lawyer, and our lawyer tells him everything. He wasn't even on the phone for an hour through this whole process, and he called in the FBI.
Wow.
Because he knew that if something happened, the FBI wouldn't want to know about it.
So you're basically being intimidated by someone. It sounds like you're here trying to find out what's going on with your daughter, and meanwhile you're facing some kind of threats or intimidation in the process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We got a rental car, and because I own a big truck, a 2500, I got a one of a kind color scheme on my truck. I've got Virginia license plate, so my truck sticks out like a sore thumb. So when all this went down, one of the safe houses that we stayed at, the guy was gracious enough to let me keep my truck there because I wouldn't. So
our truck's in hiding, and
our truck is in hiding.
And we have rented a rental car so that we blend in better here in Montana.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this is the kind of stuff that is falling through the cracks here, and they don't care. And I told them point blank, I said, I know what y'all are doing. Well, what's that? I said, you're making it as hard and as difficult as you can. So we'll just pack up and go home, and you take all this information, put it in the box, put Rebekah's name on it, and call it a cold case.
Wow.
Oh, no. We're doing all. I said, no, you're not. He said, we'll do the same thing you're doing, Jerry. I said, no, you're not. Because if this was one of your child and the whole room full of policemen, 30 on up, I said, the first thing y'all would do is you'd get the FBI in here, the AT, the DCI, all these three-letter outfits in here to help you.
Sure.
Well, no, I said, don't well me. I said, I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I've been involved in searches, and I even tell Angela that I felt safer in Iraq because I knew who the enemies were. Here, I don't know who the enemy is.
Yeah.
And that's a big big problem.
Well, you shouldn't
Yeah, 'cause
have.
we even have people. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you shouldn't have any enemies. You should have people trying to help you, not, stand in your way and do things to intimidate you.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's
And that's the problem right now, because if this is just a simple, the girl went in the river after her dog and drowned it, why are we getting so much threats and so much resistance from everybody when all we're trying to do is find our daughter? And I told both police departments, I said, whether you want to accept it or not, I said, me and my wife are here for the same reason that you're here. We all have one thing in common, to find Rebekah. And I said, you know what? We're giving you all this information that we're finding, and you're not doing anything with it. You won't tell us? And, well, we can't tell you anything. I said, yes, you can. We're the family. We have a daughter that's missing here. You can let us know something about anything, and you're not letting us know anything,
Yeah, why would they keep you in the dark if it was as simple as they say her falling in the river and drowning? It seems like there wouldn't be really anything to hold back from you.
So the other thing that they've held back and refused to release is the 911 call. So there was a 911 call, supposedly from an Oregon family. I made a video and placed a plea to the Oregon family back in October, October 31st, in fact, and placed it on Rebekah Barsotti Facebook page. It has had an enormous amount of coverage and views. And I don't know the exact number right offhand. I want to say 70,000, maybe even more than that, views. And not one person has come forward to say, I made that phone call. And my sister requested a FOIA request. It was denied because the 911 call, even in the state of Montana, is considered public information. And there's a new Criminal Justice Act effective October 1st that considers it public information. So there should be no reason to withhold that 911 call.
And now
even if they redacted the number and the name, or even if they just released the audio to let us listen to it.
What was the 911 call for? What was it about?
Supposedly, the 911 call was placed by an Oregon family because they found Rebekah's things on the riverbank on July 20th and reported it. They didn't know about her car. They were just reporting the items on the 911 call, they were just making the 911 call based on what they found on the riverbank. But they didn't.
Plus, along with all of that, they had a video of her on the river training her dog, okay?
Which they didn't know about for 2 or 3 weeks because her phone was locked.
Right. But the video shows Rebekah getting out of her car, walking down to the riverbank. Then the video ended at 2:15.
No, she was at Town Pump at 2:15.
Okay. The video ended at 3:15, we'll call it. And the call was made at 5 something.
Yeah.
And
5:37.
I asked the police, what happened in those 2 hours? Well, how do I know? I said, you didn't look into that? You didn't think it was funny? Or strange that there'd be a 2-hour gap, between when the video ended and the phone call was made? Well, I don't know when the people found it, and so they danced around that question. They do a lot of dancing up here.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the official police version, I'm going to go through it and you tell me where I'm wrong. They say that your daughter met with this caretaker. Everything was okay. The exchange was made of her stuff. Then she took her dog down to this scenic location on her own. This is their version. And while she's playing with the dog, walking around, what have you, she accidentally slips and falls in the river. And then within a short time period, a couple hours, supposedly, this other family comes along and finds her stuff spread out on the riverbank there, and that's the official account from the police. Is that correct?
Well, with the exception of their account, is that the dog went in the river and Rebekah went in to save the dog. That's their version.
So they said, okay,
But
so
they didn't know that.
so they're saying maybe she jumps in to save him and drowns in the process. Now it brings up another interesting point, because her dog, unfortunately, was found. Cerberus is his name.
Yes.
He was found 10 miles downstream, dead.
Yes.
Was there any signs of foul play, or did it appear that he may have, died from malnutrition or not having water or natural causes?
So the police department, the sheriff's department, said that the dog was found dead, that there was no evidence of foul play, and they did not give any guidance as to whether or not the dog could be possible evidence for foul play, because now, mind you, they hadn't treated Rebekah's whole missing person case as foul play. And so they had the dog taken to the Humane Society in Missoula, and they notified us and said we could do whatever, in processing him. Nobody, we asked about a necropsy. Mm-hmm. Sheriff Toth had published that a necropsy would be done. He called it an autopsy, but that's an incorrect term for an animal or for a dog. And, but the necropsy was not done, and the dog was cremated. Oh. And when the dog was cremated, they failed to remove the shock collar. Mm-hmm. And they said they couldn't remove the shock collar because it was embedded. The prongs were embedded. Oh. And I'm thinking, well, the dog's dead. You could have taken a pair of snippers and removed the shock collar. Oh. But they didn't. They cremated the dog with the shock collar on. Oh. We're of the opinion that the dog may have been electrocuted to death, but we'll never know that now. Because when you emit the button to shock, obviously in the water, it's going to be intensified if you do that instead of using the button to give a tone or vibrate. Sure. And so but when you emit the button to shock the animal, it drops them. Yeah. Their whole neurological system is disabled for 30 seconds. And if you continue, then, they remain disabled.
Yeah, especially in the water, that could, obviously cause them to drown or whatever. And I think you're right that the necropsy would have maybe said, was there any kind of signs that the dog was harmed? Was he beaten? Was he poisoned? Things like that. Right. As opposed to him going off and then being without food or water and then starving to death or dying from dehydration or whatever. That would make this case look a little bit different if for example, he was poisoned or something like that.
Right. Yeah. We had asked two veterinarians and then the person at the Humane Society about sending him for a necropsy, and they had all said he was too badly decomposed to get sufficient results. In hindsight, and this is hindsight, 2020, we should have pressed. We don't really care what you say. We want to send him off for a necropsy. Sure. But we were in such emotional turmoil at the time.
Here's the other thing about that dog is he had the shock collar on. Now, Rebekah had her controller on the lanyard around her neck. So if you're training a dog and the dog does something you don't want to do, you push the tone button and the dog will come back to you.
Yeah.
And why wasn't that done?
Well,
why didn't Rebekah push the tone button instead she just takes off the whole controller, throws it on the sand.
Yeah.
That don't make any
A lot of it doesn't make sense. And Rebekah loves Cerberus more than anything. And she would have never thrown a stick in the water or anything like that for the dog to go after in that area, because it was swift running. And the video that is that the police department has shows the Rebekah backing away from the water further onto land and telling the dog, bring me the stick, bring me the stick. And so Cerberus is bringing her the stick further away from the water, not toward the water. And so the other thing that's interesting here is that although the police department has this video, it's not the last thing that was uploaded to her iCloud account. That video is nowhere on her iCloud account. Nowhere for the day of July 20th.
And I just wanted to, you bring up a good point talking about what's on that video, because I meant to ask you, is it clearly that location and that day where this was filmed? Is she wearing the clothes that were supposedly found?
So we don't know. You don't see Rebekah in the video. You only hear her voice.
Okay.
And now, based on our presentation at the site and what we saw in the background of the video, we did recognize a tree that was down on the riverbank. We did recognize that. Now, as far as date and time stamped, we were never shown the date and time stamp.
So,
and
until you see that, there's no way to know for sure, that it was that day at that location, that it was filmed at that moment.
Or on Rebekah's phone.
Okay. And
we don't know how they got that video because it's not on the cloud.
Wow.
And Rebekah had automatic upload for her things on the cloud.
And you said there was something else that got uploaded to the cloud after that video. Do you know what it was?
Oh, no, there wasn't anything uploaded to the cloud after that video. Okay. On the cloud, the last item uploaded to the cloud is the selfie that she took of herself and Cerberus that's on the NamUs website.
Okay.
And it was taken at 11:54 on July 20th in her car.
So that was a while before she likely, whatever happened to her, it was, a couple hours at least before that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
There's one thing.
So that was, go ahead.
I was going to say, there's one thing I wanted to sort of ask you about again, because I don't feel like we brushed on it, but we didn't talk about it a lot, was this family that found these items of hers. From the sounds of it, from the way you're explaining it, this stuff was all sort of laid out and on display. I think when my wife and I or whatever, we'll go to the beach, we don't bring a lot of stuff out, credit cards and stuff where they can get dirty or fall in the water. We keep them sort of away from there. But it sounds like here, the stuff was just basically spread out and on display. Were the credit cards, the driver's license, that kind of stuff, was it in her purse or pocketbook or wallet, whatever she carried, or was it actually physically out?
Her purse was found in her vehicle. The driver's license and the credit card were found on the riverbank, perfectly laid out.
Yeah, and that's
they weren't even tossed.
They
weren't even tossed to the side.
Yeah, and maybe there's a theory where if the police theory was right for a second, she raced in and she took stuff out of her pocket, it would be messy and thrown down and some stuff upside down, the other stuff not. But here, this stuff sounds like it was displayed nicely, almost as if it was meant to be found.
Right, and they're saying that the family from Oregon picked it up and placed it exactly that way. And so my question is, wow, did the family from Oregon take a photo before they picked up and disturbed the items?
Oh. And I think that's why it's so important. You'd like to find this family and
yes,
talk to them, and maybe you'll find out, okay, they did do that. They didn't do it on purpose to throw off the investigation, but maybe perhaps that's just the way they laid it down after they looked at it. Do you have any clue?
And I can understand. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, do you have any clue what part of Oregon they're from? Anything about them? Maybe we can target some people in that area of that state to put the word out.
Yeah, we have no clue what part of Oregon. All we have heard from law enforcement is that it was a family from Oregon that was here on vacation or passing through. And that's all they have told us. And, I understand if they don't want to talk to us directly. I get that. A lot of people have reached out and said, I really didn't know if I should call because I know you're upset about Rebekah. And so I get that, but they could call our private eye, James Terry, and they could call our attorney and give them a statement. And then that way they don't have to deal with the family.
Well, and one thing I was going to suggest, and I don't know if you've thought about this or maybe your private eye already has, but perhaps maybe make some flyers, do some social media advertising in the area where the family found the items, and maybe someone will come forward saying they served them breakfast or they pumped their gas, and there might be a receipt someplace, something that might give you a clue who this family could be so that you can ultimately find them and maybe your private eye can talk to them.
Right. Yeah. I know we've posted on Facebook, Find Rebekah Barsotti, and then a lot of people boosted it on their own to different social media in Oregon. Or because out here, a lot of people visit back and forth from Washington State and Oregon and Idaho to Montana, to this part of Montana.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people took that video, downloaded it, and shared it with their family and with news Facebook pages, TV news station pages and stuff like that. So how else would we do that? I guess is my question.
It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack, I think. Just if you had a town or something to focus on, maybe. Yeah. But who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe
all we have is.
Go ahead.
All we have is like the Mineral County Facebook page and the Alberton Facebook page in Missoula, St. Regis. They don't have a Facebook page, but they have a community page that they let me post on.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess we could rerun that. We could rerun that plea.
Yeah.
We ran it.
It's an uphill battle. I think it's tough, but it sounds like you guys are dedicated to pulling out all the stops. So maybe someone somewhere in that town remembers talking with his family or can provide details, or maybe they checked into a hotel while they were there for a day, and you could find some kind of clue. And maybe, who knows, maybe some of our listeners here or in Oregon, maybe they'll share this on their social media, and that family will hear your plea and come forward and help you with some information.
That is a really good idea. So we'll go ahead and repost that from a different angle.
Yeah, and the word of mouth, the word of social media, if you can focus on different people that might have information and ask them to share, if it gets in front of enough people, you might find someone that has information, or again, someone in the town, in the area where your daughter went missing, if they have a memory of, maybe they wrote down this license plate of them when they came into their hotel or for gas or something like that. So you never know, something like that could be a long shot, but it might produce some kind of clues.
That's a really good idea. Mike.
Well,
thank you.
Again, all we can do is try and share the story, share the details, put it out there. Hope listeners here will share on social media and bring people to your site so they can maybe provide information if they have it. Again, where can listeners find more information about the case?
So right now, the best site is the Facebook page, Find Rebekah Barsotti. We are working on a website, but we hit a snag. The person who was managing the website has had poor health, so they haven't been able to keep it updated. So we're working on getting a new domain extension. It'll still be Find Rebekah, but it'll be a different one. And we're actually working this week on getting that up. And as soon as we get that new domain up with more comprehensive information in one place, because of course Facebook you have to scroll through and look for the featured stories and the videos and things like that. We do have a website. It's findrebekahbarsotti.com. There is information on there that's in a more comprehensive order and format. It's just with the illness of the person running the website design, they haven't been able to keep it updated. And I don't know their availability in the future. So we're having to start that process over.
Yeah, it sounds like it's one thing after another that you're having to deal with, whether it's dealing with the police or dealing with getting the word out there on social media. It sounds like there's a lot of obstacles, but we're going to try and help spread the word. And
thank you.
I hope that you do find the truth here and get some headway going here.
Yeah, and and the obstacles come up because we are working with volunteers and life happens, and so you have to work with people as their challenges present.
Yeah.
And but right now, findrebekahbarsotti.com. I mean, it is up. It's just not current. And we're working on getting findrebekahbarsotti.net. We're working on trying to get that up this week with current information.
And hopefully,
right now we're in the process of putting up billboards along the major highways here, with the information. We've offered rewards. We have a reward of $12,000 leading to the finding and conviction of Rebekah.
Well, the finding of Rebekah is $9,500, and then if there's foul play involved, the conviction is $2,500.
Okay.
And the person that should be contacted with any leads is our private investigator, because we already have a system set up where he would call our attorney after he validates the lead. And our investigator's name is James Terry with Gulf Coast Investigative Services, and his phone number is 813-993-2242. And he's available 24/7.
Okay, hopefully if anyone out there listening has information, they will bring that forward and help you out. I know you've been through a great challenge. You've uprooted your lives basically to go find out what happened to Rebekah and to be there. And I hope that you get some answers and your hard work pays off.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
While Rebekah was missing, her husband David went on trial on domestic violence charges based on a call to law enforcement made by Rebekah on March 9, 2021, alleging that he had threatened to shoot her hands off. David was found not guilty by a jury that reportedly was not informed that Rebekah, the alleged victim of the assault, was missing. On February 2, 2022, David was appointed conservator of Rebekah's estate by the district court. Thereafter, Rebekah's mom, Angela, petitioned the district court for appointment as guardian for Rebekah, arguing that such an appointment would vest in her powers to facilitate searches for her daughter. David agreed, and the district court appointed Angela as Rebekah's full guardian until she was found. Angered at what they felt was a lack of responsiveness by the local officials to Rebekah's missing persons case, Rebekah's family, her mother and stepfather, Angela and Jerry Mastrovito, and her father, Ralph Rose, hired private search groups to scour miles and miles of the river for Rebekah. They also hired P.I. James Terry to advocate for Rebekah's case and worked to raise awareness about domestic violence. The body of a woman was found in Riverbend in Mineral County, Montana on May 17, 2022. Local TV news station KPAX reported that the body was found on the riverbank by fishermen. The family contends that the sheriff's office has subsequently asserted that the body was found in the river. The body was identified as Rebekah by dental records. The sheriff's office claims Rebekah's death was a tragic drowning accident and nothing more. This was the ruling of the initial pathologist, but a second autopsy commissioned by the family was unable to be performed due to the state of the remains. After Rebekah was found, the court appointed her husband, David, as personal representative of Rebekah's estate the following day. According to the family, DNA testing on the remains has not been conducted, and the body was cremated pursuant to the directive of David. They question the clothing the body was found wearing and a statement by an alleged witness by the river claiming to have seen a body lying in a boat and a dog paddling behind it. The Mastrovitos in general have grave concerns about what they believe actually happened to Rebekah. In October 2022, Angela Mastrovito sued Rebekah's estate, which consisted of Rebekah's vehicle, her interest in the house she owned jointly with David, bank accounts with balances of about $1,000, and various personal items. Angela sought reimbursement of $140,000 that she claimed to have expended in the quest to find her daughter in her capacity as guardian. The district court denied Angela's claim for reimbursement, ruling that she had not appropriately justified the expenses she had incurred. Under Montana's laws governing guardianship, quote, a guardian is to act only as necessary to promote and protect the well-being of the person. A guardian is entitled to receive reasonable sums for the guardian's services and for room and board furnished to the ward as agreed upon between the guardian and the conservator, provided the amounts agreed upon are reasonable under the circumstances. The case went all the way to the Montana Supreme Court, which handed down its decision on March 12th of this year, affirming the district court's ruling. So the Mastrovitos and the other members of Rebekah's family find themselves at a loss with regard to their recourse in this case. As laid out on their website, findRebekahBarsotti.com, they feel strongly that Rebekah was a victim of domestic violence at the hands of her husband, and he is responsible for what happened to her. They allege threats against them and their homes, hired assassins, statements made by David to someone else indicating he watched Rebekah drown, David's history of domestic violence against his first wife, that David indirectly benefited from an accidental death insurance policy Rebekah owned, that David misrepresents his status as a wounded veteran to qualify for benefits, and that the sheriff's office engaged in a cover-up regarding Rebekah's case. For those of you who are interested in hearing more about this, the family recommends a July 2022 article on the Outer Limits radio show website titled How Montana Sheriffs Helped David Barsotti Get Away with Murder. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Missing Persons. If you can provide any information to help solve the case we discussed in this episode, please contact the appropriate authorities.
If you enjoy this podcast, please take a moment to tell your friends about Missing Persons and invite them to listen to the show. Word of mouth will help us grow and bring these cases to a larger audience. You can also help us by taking a moment to rate and review Missing Persons on the platform you're listening to us now on. Just a reminder that new episodes of Missing Persons air every other Saturday. If you want to find us on social media, we're on Facebook at facebook.com/missingpersonspod. We're also on Twitter with the handle @missing_pod. And of course, you can find us and contact us through our website, missingpersonspodcast.com. On behalf of Jess Betancourt, this is Mike Morford saying thanks, and we'll see you next time on Missing Persons.